Most of the time when I ask someone, where do you get, where do you get your water from? They say the faucet. But no, it doesn't. It has to travel for it to get to that faucet. Our First Nation people, they were great stewards of this land. They lived within their water means. We do not. So at the time, they had the aquifers worked. But when we colonized, we industrialized, the aquifers became tainted. You could no longer use the water. So we bring in more water. So if you live in LA, Los Angeles, you get water from 3 sources. You have water that comes from Northern California, from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. You have water that comes from the Colorado River. Then you have the Los Angeles Aqueduct that was built by William Mulholland. And when he went to the Owens Valley, saw all of this water, it was lush and beautiful, and realized that he could build a project that, because of the topography of the area, you did not need to pump the water. Gravity could lead that water into Los Angeles. Los Angeles was a small city, but having that water come from Owens Valley really made the city of Los Angeles grow into what it is today. And so you have to remember that anytime you have a lot of water flowing, then that water flow actually influences growth in a city. It influences how big your city is going to grow. It influences how many people come and immigrate to your city and set lives, and how much money is to be made, and employment. They're not thinking at the time, you're not thinking, well, it's going to be growing to 6 million people. They built the first aqueduct that brings water here, and they depleted the Owens Valley so much that they had dried up Owens Lake. It wasn't just humans that were affected. We lost nature. We lost flora, we lost fauna. There was a lot of damage done. That doesn't mean growth is bad. It's just that we're growing without thinking of the consequences.
For just one moment, close your eyes and imagine a river. Where we're all standing is not a typical kind of river. We're imagining a river, and it's wild, and it's flowing, and it's winding, and this river, it looks very different. A series of storms that we would nowadays call an atmospheric river that created a huge amount of rain. The LA River overtook the banks and all the development that people had done around it at that time. With any disaster, there's a response. One of those ideas was called the Emerald Necklace. We could keep the river as this wild thing, but build parks around it, and maybe angle them up a little bit, and if it flooded into the parks, mostly it would absorb into the ground, and we would have a park to enjoy. The other idea came from the Army Corps of Engineers. We just need to get the water out of here as quickly as possible. That's the only goal, prevent floods. So what we gotta do is dig up the river and cover it in concrete. That's the Western cultural way of thinking about our relationship to nature. Stuff it down, and we're in charge. We don't need to do anything to relate to nature or work with it. It's an enemy. The only reason LA exists is because of the LA River. That was the life-sustaining force of water that allowed the city to be founded in the first place. But as soon as we took water from other places, we disregarded that river, and we locked it up in a concrete straitjacket. In LA, we don't have a connection to our water, and so we treat our water differently. We're more wasteful with it. By being dependent on those other sources, we are then dependent on the changes in the weather. If there's less snowpack in the Sierra, then we have less water available to us. The San Andreas Fault crosses the California Aqueduct, so a big one could potentially damage those systems of water that we put in place that we're completely dependent on. And that would have long-term impact that would be very difficult to recover from, and it makes us weaker and less resilient as a community.
Water independence means that you have a reliable, sustainable source of water. Now, that does not mean we are still not going to be getting water from the Delta or the Colorado or Mono Lake, right? Because these are systems that have been in place. However, it does mean we can get less water and we can do less damage. We still have the same amount of water on Earth that we did when it first started. And so we have to think about water in those terms, that it is not infinite. And we really have to be careful about how we use the water.
LA can become more water independent by capturing our own water here. So that's ecosystem restoration to allow water to percolate into the groundwater. Collecting more of the rainwater in spreading grounds and then using wells to take that water back up. We can also do water recycling. So that's using the water from our homes that we wash down the sink, filtering that, and then putting that back into the soak through the ground and then taking it back up through wells. And we can do that at home as well by building a bioswale or a rain garden, taking a downspout from a rain gutter and collecting that water in your yard so it soaks down into the ground instead of going out to the street, to the storm drain, to the river, to the ocean. Right? We can also use rain barrels to collect water at home and use that to water plants during the drier times of the year. I think education is so critical, and when we understand something deeper, we connect to it, and then we want to do something to protect it. And I love seeing people get that aha moment, that it's all connected and every single part of the ecosystem is critical. I believe that hope is a survival strategy. We foster that hope by action, and that action fosters more hope, and that spark and that energy to keep fighting for a better planet.